February 11th meeting of the technical AMATS technical advisory. Nice. And it is 2:30, we're starting on time. Mr. Morris has been excused, so he is not here in roll call. But I will go through everyone else. Ms. Cars? Here. Mr. Martin?
Hello.
Ms. Morello here. Ms. Witt? Here. Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Lemieux?
Present.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Hurd? We do have quorum. Everybody's happy to be here. All of this stuff.
I'm going to give you excuse now.
Your call. Take two.
Just handling it.
Yeah, and making sure that there's going to be enough people. Yeah, usually they try to let for vacation. Should I try my hand at public involvement in on-council?
It's your call.
No, I'm gonna let you do it.
Let's see how much I had to do today.
All AMATS meetings are public meetings, and the public is invited to comment. If they have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff or a consultant, and then the committee will be given a chance to discuss it, and at that point, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. All right, up before us first is the approval of the agenda. Move to approve. Moved by Ms. Witt, seconded by Mr. Hanson. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Next up before us are 2 months worth of meeting minutes. First is November 12th, 2015. Move to approve. Aaron, was this one that, or?
No, it'll be the next one.
Second.
So moved by Ms. White, seconded by Mr. Walker. Are there any opposed to approving the November 12th meeting minutes? Madam Chair. Thank you. Once again, it's just so cool having, knowing what it is to do. Just my memory sometimes. Hearing no updates to November 12th are approved. Next before us is December 3rd.
There is an edit on the minutes for this one.
Okay.
In the minutes, it talks about the admin mod number 7 and the changes to the roadway table, table number 3. We made some changes at the last minute to it, so it's talking about kind of those additional changes we ended up not going forward with. So I've already discussed with Lori kind of the changes we want to go to. Basically, we're going from what's in the minutes right now to what we had on the original memo sheet that's talking about just moving the $135,000 from 16 into 17 on the O'Malley Road reconstruction project. And that was to balance the tip around the additional money added in for the MTP cost estimating and the travel demand model additional work we're having done. Pretty much. Clarifying to make sure everyone's aware of what we actually did in the meeting.
Is that what we actually approved in the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So the line text that's in the minutes right now, stuff needs to be deleted out.
Yes. And I've already talked to Lori about what it is. So basically, we're going to be deleting out 3 of the 4 bullets. The only one we're keeping in is the one that talks about the update to the table 3, where it says that update O'Malley Road reconstruction and pavement replacement program to balance the tip. We're keeping that bullet point in, but we are editing the language to better reflect what actually happened. And that's where we're pretty much just going to copy and paste what was in the memo that was given to you guys on admin mod number 7 and just put it in there for them. Because that's what actually happened, is what's in the memo.
Okay. So the other 3 bullet points under that table 3 go away?
Yes.
Okay. Would you approve it as amended by staff? Moved by Ms. Witt, seconded by Mr. Warren. Are there any opposed to approving the December 3rd meeting minutes as amended by staff? Hearing none, we are approved.
Tosh would have been here on time, except the plating counter grabbed me. Even better.
Occupational hazard. Okay, next up before us, are our business items. Item 5A, production management process report final draft and status of the system report final draft.
So you had both of these documents before you at the December TAC meeting, and you approved both of these documents. The documents went to the policy committee in their January meeting, and they had several recommendations and suggested edits for the CMP and the status of the system. And the memo outlines what those edits are. You'll see in the CMP update, change there, and then some minor edits. And then the status of the system report, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, changes and minor edits. So, we can send it back to review. Happy to answer questions. Teresa would have been here to answer those questions, but she decided instead to go to a beach somewhere, so she's not able to answer those questions right now. That would be an excused absence. Good point. So we're asking for your recommendation of approval of these changes as outlined in the memo and included in the documents for the policy committee meeting this month, so we can finalize this creature. This is the last item still outstanding in our certification review.
Ms. Wetch?
If I may, Craig, for the policy committee, will Teresa be there?
Yes.
And can we also have somebody from transit there, because they had the most questions, and Mr. Flynn was the one very interested.
That is the plan. She definitely will be there. She'll be back in time. Make sure that.
One of us, Bart or I will be there. And then there was, just to clarify the 35%.
No, we did not have a chance before the meeting.
If I may, Madam Chair, there was some question on
It's under the anchor rights. The section of anchor rights.
It's in the
is talking
status of the
about-
system?
Yeah. I think it's in the-
it was, we had, there was a question about one of the changes that was made.
-46 on the status
Yeah.
of the system with the anchor roads.
That's the edit. It's talking about the top reason.
I'm sorry, what page?
3-46.
Are all the changes the highlighted stuff?
Okay.
That's what I was focusing on.
Yeah, if I may, the second sentence on page 3-46 in the highlighted paragraph says the top reason has been a 35% trip reduction in Medicaid, home and community-based waiver participant certifications due to a state backlog. Okay, so is it a 35% reduction in participants or certifications? Or because it says here 35% trip reduction, I don't understand.
The number of trips that were provided were 35% lower for that category. Anchor Rights has many, many funding sources. One of the funding sources is the Medicaid, and the Medicaid was down.
Okay, so a 35% reduction in the number of trips provided through Medicaid home and is that?
So I see.
Well, you're just trying to say that really that there was, the question is that, I guess, is that waiver participation certification resulted in a 35% of the trips being reduced? I mean, or is that not what we're saying?
It's 35% reduction in the Medicaid home and community-based waiver trips.
So just that.
Because if you read at the bottom, Municipal contracted trips have not decreased.
That was a key, yeah.
Right.
Good information.
Right, so, I mean, again, it's many, many funding sources. Two of the funding sources had serious drops.
Okay. So if I may, Jody, so if we said the top reason has been a 35% reduction in the number of trips provided through because the actual trips were reduced by 35% because of the reduction in funding and participants, certification. Does that work?
Category, yes.
Yeah.
The top reason, trip reduction.
So we had 35% reduction in trips.
It's not that informative, though.
Dedicated, don't understand the behavior.
Right, it's,
But I think the key thing that Mr. Flynn was interested in was the municipal contracted trips. That's good information.
Because I wanted it to be clear to say, like, the top reason has been the reduction, you know, due to the Medicaid home and community-based participant certifications, you know, state backlog, blah, 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 everything like that, has resulted in 35% reduction in those trips, like, making it very clear
Yep.
that it's just for those, I don't know, because reading this, it did, I can.
Would you like us to wordsmith it and then,
Yeah,
before it comes to the policy committee?
yes, please, that sentence.
Okay.
To help
We'll work with
clarify.
transit to wordsmith it,
Yeah, just make it really clear.
make it a little more clear.
and maybe put a little bit of a history at the beginning about what anchor rights is, that there are multiple
And the
funding
funding
sources.
sources.
Multiple funding sources.
Yeah, that would help too.
Okay.
Okay.
We will do that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to point out two typographical errors on page 2-20 and 2-21. On 2-21.
In which is that?
The,
Status of the system?
status.
Okay. And you're starting
There's a
on
list of
page
seg-
2-21?
2-21.
Okay.
There's a list of segments, bullet points, and two of them, it's, the Fifth Avenue is mislabeled as Fifth Street.
Yeah.
And then on the previous page, there's a chart that doesn't have a legend. It'd be helpful to have
Oh.
The red is a little.
Yeah, it's figure 2.6 on page 2-20. There's no, yeah, what is the difference between the red and blue?
And Madam Chair, just a comment for staff, since I had the chair of the last policy committee meeting, to be pretty clear that in the future, it'd be nice if we had the opportunity to present information to them and give them a month to review it before asking them to approve it. So maybe just for consideration
For the future.
for scheduling, yeah. I mean, the TAC had seen it so many times, and then I really felt it was first understanding.
Yeah, probably in this case, the any technical documents, that would make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none at this time, I'm going to open it to public comment. Are there any questions or comments from the public at this time?
There's another error on page 4-48,
On,
the status of the system, sorry.
okay.
It is the second paragraph highlighted,
Yes.
last paragraph highlighted. It's actually the very last sentence that says, additionally, CMAQ funding from the Federal Highway Administration was secured for the annual maintenance fee for the Right Amigos program. It's not actually true. It's not CMAQ. It's not true CMAQ funding. So we do have a sentence that will change it to that just talks about that additionally funding from FHWA has been programmed into the TIP for the maintenance fee, into the 2015-2018 TIP, something like that. We have a sentence out there kind of floating around as to what we want it to to better reflect that.
Did we rename the table?
No, we have not renamed the table. So just pointing that out is another change.
Are there any other questions or comments on the public on either one of these documents? For the CMP and status of the system.
Bart, is this, and Erin, are those changes things that can be given to staff, like tomorrow?
Yeah, I can reword the ride share one.
And the
Anchor rides one,
Anchor
you'll
rides.
do ride share.
Okay.
And my sentence I already sent out, so I just need to confirm with Jamie after this meeting, and it'll be ready.
We have the document to edit.
All right, great.
Contractor's work is finished, so it's.
Any last chance for public comment? Going once, going twice? All right, from out our lives with the committee, and we are being asked at this time to approval of the policy and recommendations for the CMP update, the commissioner report, and for the final document to the policy committee.
So moved. With the edits.
Moved by Ms. Cars. Seconded by Mr. Hanson. Are there any opposed to the motion at hand? Hearing none, we are so moved. Please make those final edits and get them to the policy committee. Can we get these in final form or do we down?
We usually do that. That's not stapled or
Yeah.
binder clipped.
Yes.
Save money.
I get, do you know?
They'll be down.
I just cleaned my office.
Do you want to know how many versions of this I have?
Way too many, way too many. All right, next item for us is the Transportation Alternatives Program appendix process.
Okay. Jump in. You wanna do that, or you want me to?
I can do it, or you can.
Go for it.
We thank you to the TAC for the work session we had a few weeks ago on the TAP program. And we incorporated the comments that you submitted. Those comments are summarized in this one-page document here that you have. We did not receive any comments from the public between that work session and now. We posted the summary of information on the AMATS website. Jamie posted that for us, and we did not include the nomination form itself because we didn't want people to submit, start filling out a form if you had more changes that you wanted to suggest. So anyways, these are the comments that we received from you. Those have been incorporated into the document. If those look good to you, we're hoping that you'll approve that so that we can post it and start our TAP nomination process. If you have more comments or changes, then we should probably discuss it today, but that's kind of what we were thinking, right, Craig?
Yep. We have as we've told you before, a tight time frame to obligate the 2013 funds, so we need to get rolling on this so we can get those, utilize those funds.
I've got three, we just got one meeting with, it'll take all the funds.
Well, that's very sweet.
Submit your application.
Good thing it's
Yeah.
a competitive process as we
Applications.
speak.
Yes, I was waiting, sorry. Let's just make sure that there's nothing in our currently adopted public participation plan that would indicate that this is something that should be released by the
Possibly was supposed to do that.
There's nothing that would indicate that. Okay. Good.
All right, I'm reading the document. I didn't, two little comments that I made. Are there any other questions, comments, or clarifications from the committee? On the edits from our work session?
Hearing no comments from the public?
Matter now lies with the committee. I believe they're looking for us to release the TAP grant application for call for project nominations.
So moved.
Second.
Is that you, Mr. Move?
Yeah, I felt like seconding.
Moved by Ms. Carter, second. Are there any opposed to the motion? Then we are so moved. You were so good. Waiting on your stuff, or another. Exactly. All right, someone leave the application. That completes the business items, so we now are to the general information items. And the first before us is our quarterly obligation report.
And being that first quarter, it's pretty slim. We've obligated a few items so far. So on the first page in the roadway category, we have the 8.82 million that was AC from 16 to 15, so we're reflecting that. And then the Minnesota Drive Mobility and Safety Study also was AC, so that is underway. There was an open house within the last 2 weeks that was soon to be well attended, so that's already moving along quickly. So those are the two items that have already been obligated. You can see several, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 other projects in the roadway category looking to be obligated this year, barring any unforeseen circumstances. That's it for the roadway ones. And non-motorized, we have a couple that have begun so far. The bike plan overall project implementation is rolling, and the CIZ is also going on. That is basically everything we've obligated so far this year. And if you look at the very last page in red, you'll see we're at 0.20. Where we're supposed to be the quarter, and we're supposed to be plus or minus within 15%. So obviously, first quarter very, very early. Not much to report. Happy to answer questions if there are some. That's about it.
I was planning to see the first quarterly report in February.
Keeping in mind that this is the federal fiscal year, so it started October 1, that's why October, November, December.
Well, it's just funny, I have monthly updates and I look at my budget. I'm happy to report that it's February 11th, I'm looking great.
Yeah. Well, we have the PL funds, which they're on the calendar year, so the first quarter report is the actual first quarter of the year, and then we have the muni calendar and the state calendar and the technical calendar. Yes, sir.
One more if you want to talk about it.
What is it?
I can talk about it. So on page 3, under the programs, it says multimodal trip planner and smartphone application.
Oh, yes.
It mentions it'll be moved from 16 to 17 as funding is not needed until then. This is the maintenance funding for the Ride Amigos program that Jamie has been working her butt off on. And so because it's just now kind of getting into place, I believe, what is it, Jamie, the first year?
First year is funded by the grant from the Veterans Transportation Grant. So we have that money secured for the build of the web-based planner and the smartphone app. So that's good to go. We'll just need the maintenance in 17, 18, and 19.
So look for that. We'll do that for the next admin mod sometime soon.
Okay, so is the 70,000 the maintenance amount for those years? Okay.
So we're just moving them all out a year. We're not like combining them.
Any questions or comments on the officer report? Sorry, no, we can't. Sorry,
I
didn't
do
see.
have
Yeah.
I know. So I tried Ride Amigos, and I was so happy to see I could either walk 7 miles to the airport from my home, or I could take a bus in an hour and 5 minutes. And I looked at all the connections, 3 buses, and in an hour and 5 minutes. That was pretty impressive. So
Isn't that fun?
yeah, it was really, really fun. I opted not to
Walk or.
But yeah, I think everybody should get on. I think it does not work with Windows Explorer. You
I've
have-
been using both. I've been using Chrome and Explorer and my phone.
I couldn't get it open on Explorer, but I did get it open on Chrome.
I did it on Explorer.
Did you? Okay.
Interestingly enough, it said my bike trip from home to here would take 33 minutes, which is the amount of time it takes me, but I take a different route.
Craig actually has a sensor on it. He doesn't realize it, but.
So I think everybody should give it a try, just for, first of all, for testing.
Oh, so right now, sorry, just so you don't feel left out. Right now, I just sent it out to a small group to start testing because the development site has been live and it's been populated with some information. I can definitely send it out to the committee, or we can plan to do a demo at the next meeting. It's up to you, whatever you would like to do. But I'm really excited. This has been like 5 years in the making, so to finally see it come alive is pretty awesome.
When you got
It's up to you. I thought if you're, how long did it take you, it said it would take you walking 7 miles?
Well, I, of course, plugged in my conditions at an hour and 10.
Now if you can just leave with your
It
Fitbit.
was like 2.3 hours or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
It was legit.
Yeah, it was legit. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if you hooked it.
Not with the rolling suitcase.
But frankly, the bus at an hour and 5 was not that bad. The 3 bus trips. It's not that bad.
And that information is going to evolve as we get more information. And right now, the Code for Anchorage group is beta testing real-time transit through Google Transit. And so hopefully we'll be on schedule to roll that into this. We kind of have a couple different launch dates in mind right now, but the real-time transit data is really important to us. Another kind of interesting and exciting thing is when they loaded the maps, they actually incorporated the entire road system for the state. So I called Fairbanks and I called a couple of the other agencies and that had Google Transit feed, and they are going to be incorporated into this as well. So we're really going to be able to incorporate a lot of the transit and also carpooling and things like that, and biking and walking throughout the whole state. But I'm not walking Fairbanks. So.
You can see what it takes to get up to the North Slope.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, that's an option too. So, sorry for writing me.
No, it was really cool. It was, thank you for letting me, I think it's really cool.
Thanks for buying into it, so.
Is there, if there's no harm in having
No.
other guinea pigs?
Heck yeah, I'd like as many guinea pigs as possible. So, I'll send it up.
Very cool. All right, so that was the obligation report. Any other questions or comments? Okay, for the general information items, we look back at public comment as well.
It's up to you. But happy to.
Sure, I guess I can ask. Are there any questions or comments from anybody else in the audience on the audit report? Okay. Next up is the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Wanted to give a quick report. We had our first meeting last week, I believe it was. We got every member of the committee there, which was good. We had an informational session, giving them an AMATS 101 and letting them know the lay of the land. They elected the chair and vice chair. So the chair of the committee is Debbie Osiander, who you'll remember served on our policy committee for a while. She's an assembly member from Eagle River, Eagle River. And the vice chair, the name familiar to most, is John Tolley, who served on the TAC for many, many years. So it looks like a very engaged group of people, so that's good. We discussed the public involvement plan with them, and at their request, we agreed to have a meeting in March and formally take the public involvement plan before them and get their recommendations so that you, the TAC and the policy committee, will have the recommendations of your new citizen advisory committee on that plan. So we were originally planning on having the public involvement plan before you for a March approval. So this will just delay us 1 month, but it will give them a chance to have a swing at it.
Makes sense.
It does, we were just looking and thinking, this is a new committee, maybe they don't want to dive in with both feet, but they get it. Probably because of that unruly planning and zoning commission member, Mr. Sprint, but he insisted. So we figured.
That's good.
That doesn't need to be.
All right, well, that's good news. I'm happy to hear
Yeah.
that. I am slightly amazed that everybody showed up.
They are a responsive committee.
How many people is it again?
11.
11, I didn't say I thought it was.
Yeah, one
yeah.
from each assembly district, two from both chambers of commerce, J-Bear, planning and zoning, Federation of Community Councils, and am I missing one?
They all showed up. Yeah, they all showed. They all showed up.
It was good.
Showed. Wow.
Good meeting.
TAC, you've been challenged. I'll show you. On that note, I won't speak here this month. No, I'm playing. I'll be here. All right, next item is the Fairbanks Complete Streets Project.
So we have a couple of presentations coming up. First will be Cindy Gilder with DEC, at the request of Cindy Heil, that has to present. So I'll turn a light off and
Did you need?
get this on.
Yeah, I was gonna do, unless you guys feel like you'll get death by PowerPoint.
No, that's fine.
No, no.
We can just, I'll just move out, make sure we move out of your way.
That's the advantage of going first.
But I haven't done death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So, I'm Cindy Gilder, and I'm the non-point source manager for DEC. And so what is that, within the Division of Water, what does that really mean in English? My group works on projects where there isn't a permitted water quality discharge. So if you don't actually have a permit, but you're still causing pollution, it's something they work on. Example, your car drips oil, you haven't maintained your car, it drips oil on the street, that ultimately ends up in our waterways. So my group tries to convince people to get their cars fixed. So what I'm here to talk to you today about is how within Fairbanks we used some the Complete Streets construction opportunities to increase the amount of green infrastructure. This came up as a suggestion, and I'll talk a little bit about this, when we were briefing our commissioner, and he said, you know, you really got to go talk to some of the Anchorage folks about what's happening in Fairbanks, just to plant the seeds. So this is a seed planting presentation. Just a little bit of background. I work within DEC for the Division of Water. Among the things we do is we provide financial assistance. And some of this is some of what I'll talk about is how we fostered that happening for water, wastewater facility constructions, also for water body assessment and restoration projects. I currently have a grant opportunity out. It's not huge. We have about 300,000 total. Typical grants are 5 to 25,000, but we've got the request for proposals out right now. It's an annual grant program called the Alaska Clean Water Actions Grant Program. Applications are closing on Tuesday. So who's in this partnership? We got together, a group of us got together, and it was actually the seed money for this was the ARAR money, where we said, how do we increase the amount of green infrastructure in Fairbanks? That was sort of the overall mission of the group. It's a combination led by DEC, DNR, DOT's involved in it. Fish and Wildlife has played a huge role. They have big bucks, so they're an important player in this group. There's nonprofits, the city, the Fairbanks North Star Borough. We also have a number of private firms who are helping out. Design Alaska, Corvus, Bettesworth North, PNC Engineers. And then there's a bunch of people, because we do have bi-monthly meetings, who I say have a finger on the pulse. EPA's been keeping an eye on our sort of what our meeting minutes say. But we really set as a focus, how do we increase the amount of green infrastructure in Fairbanks? So just as a little bit of background, just in case anybody doesn't know, green infrastructure uses the natural environment to manage stormwater. And I pulled a couple of examples, actually in Anchorage, where you've got some green infrastructure. If you go to the Century 16 parking lot, what you'll see is they've got a beehive system in the middle, so the stormwater, rather than just immediately flushing into our stormwater system, has some of it has a chance to percolate through. Conversely, and this is from the Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center, part of the parking lot has a bioswale around it so that the drainage goes from the parking lot into the bioswale and then into the adjacent wetlands. The part of the reason I pulled this slide is as we were finishing up, and I happen to be personally involved in the project from another capacity, and I got there and they put the curbs and I went, oh, how are the trees going to get any water? And it just would have been a lot simpler had they done curb cuts, and you would have had some of the flow from the parking lot going into the planters instead of doing all, bordered planters. So sometimes simple fixes make a difference. Which brings me to the Complete Streets construction project. So this is existing Fairbanks, and they were planning a Complete Streets project to make it go from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, to widen the sidewalks, to add some trees. So we use this opportunity to work to say, okay, well, the backhoes are going to be out there, and a lot of times putting projects together, I'm sure you guys know, it's getting the backhoe out there. So what we did was we funded a project where we actually went knocking on doors to the adjacent businesses and said, okay, if you guys don't mind having a little more of your sidewalk torn up, because the street's going to be torn up anyway, can we change some of the drainage from your building so that it's not automatically shooting into the stormwater system, but it's actually allowing to naturally percolate through a variety of mechanisms? So we had, with money from VEC, one of the local nonprofits went literally knocking on doors of businesses, McGaffery's, a salon, Sadler's, the bus depot, the distillery, the Children's Museum, Madden Real Estate. It was also an opportunity that they started talking to people about what's the project, what's really the Complete Streets project. We got some designs done. Here's one of a salon where, okay, so the alternative is the roof goes into a rain barrel, you've got some infiltration planters, you've got some permeable pavers down. We approached the bus depot to put in permeable pavers, to have some infiltration planning, to put up some signs. We looked at Big I, and I think the quote from the owner, and you guys probably can't read that, but he's really talking about, he's got historical photographs. There was a connection between the river, and this is up abutting the Chena River, and the business. And so he really sees this as a win-win situation. It's good for the river, it's good for the community, it's good for the fish. Now there's protection for the river. People can fish from his property. I can see my project as they float down the river, and it sets an example of what we want the city to look like. So there's actually some, and this is where Fish and Wildlife, it's been the pooling of the money. It's having somebody say, how do I take a little bit from here, a little bit from there? Fish and Wildlife has been putting the bill for all of the revegetation to happen, the bank stabilization. We approached Sadler's. Unfortunately, this doesn't sell any more couches. So they've turned us down. The Sadler's parking lot, which has some basic drainage problems, said, no, we're not interested. So this one's not happening.
Was they offered to actually go on to private property and make these improvements for them because of the benefits to the drainage?
Right. Part of
And
what's
they
happening.
didn't take you up on that.
And they did not take us up on it.
Even though it wouldn't have cost them anything but a few
Apparently,
parking spaces.
when I chat with folks in Fairbanks, we had all of this going, and they said, no thanks.
If they complained, it would be too hard to move their snow around.
Oh, I imagine, well, that's a point, yeah, that's a good point.
So, snow removal becomes, yes, or there's some, that's what you hear with,
Just think what my maintenance guys would say.
Oh, yeah, good point.
it might be harder to
Stinking
move.
trees in the way.
But they have some basic drainage problems.
Obviously.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Great.
Usually.
And I would have said, heck yeah, come on.
I was gonna say, it's just a waste of parking oasis.
But it doesn't sell more couches. Construction's happening this summer, so the projects are in fact moving forward. This is a bit of what the street looked like this summer. And as I said, a big piece of what was key is the equipment's out there anyway, because and this is why I'm coming to talk to you, because the road is getting dug up. To approach a business and say, do you want to do this and have this torn up without having the equipment out there is a lot more expensive. So I'm here to start a dialogue. How do we have this happening in Anchorage? We do have an annual grant program. I know I've reached out to Chrissy Bischofberger, who's the watersheds coordinator here. It's reaching out to the various groups. How do we get the dialogue started? Because I think in the long run, it was pulling a little, my little bit of money, somebody else's little bit of money, somebody else's little bit of money together, sort of planting the seed on, oh, maybe we could do this here, not knowing about what all the various projects are that are going on.
So the work on private property, that was paid for is being paid for using public dollars?
We pay for we don't have a preclusion on our 319 funding.
Is there any type of access easement that's also granted with that, or does it remain private property?
It's remained private property. What we've had, for the projects we've done on private property, there has to be some agreement, and I'm getting into some of our grant stuff, that says they're gonna leave it as what, the green infrastructure. Yeah, and you have to maintain it as such. So there has been, to the extent we've had other projects where we've gone in, we're working on a project down in Juneau, we can't go and put it in and then have them pull it out. The feds, I think, have, the Fish and Wildlife money has the same thing on their cost share program. Fish and Wildlife has been the big funder, and you can see it along the stream banks. They've been the big funder. But Anchorage is a priority. We've got great salmon runs.
Pretty tough to do things like that using federal highway dollars. It's not possible.
But
I don't know how to fish it, frankly.
But that's where Fish and Wildlife, because it's part of stream bank restoration, goes on. Fish and Game has money that goes on private property for stream bank restoration. It's a piece of that puzzle. It's pulling the various pieces of the puzzle. It's asking maybe federal highway, and it really is negligible cost. Could you just tear up 5 more feet of concrete while you're tearing? And I can't imagine, it's getting the backhoe out there. Right?
Yeah. Give me a call. We have our own MS4 permit actually at the board. We have our own stuff to do.
Yeah, no, this is the way. How do we make this happen? How do we sort of pool little bits?
So one of the first things is, as we look at street improvements, one of the pieces of information that's missing, I think, for the business community is when you improve outside of your building, like they were trying to do in Fairbanks, does it translate to your bottom line? And there's lots of literature that would say if you make the right sets of improvements, you're more likely to have people come. You're gonna grab walking traffic coming through. People like to congregate in places where we've deliberately made it for you to congregate there. So whether it's Spinard or some other place that we're trying to focus people, once you say this is a destination, right, then you want to put those kind of improvements in. There hasn't been funding for the kind of improvements that you're talking about. So it's a great absence in Alaska of placemaking kind of dollars. So this is really important as an opportunity to, but it means you're going to have transportation professionals dealing with somebody else at the table and with the city engineering team and building teams, as well as the we're going to have to convince some of the business owners that's in their best interest too.
I think one of the keys that has made this project successful is the person who, and she only just recently took another job, but worked for the Tanana Valley Watershed Association, who actually went knocking on the businesses' doors. Doesn't have an environmental background to start, but had a marketing background.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
And so she was, her comment to me when they came back from Sadler's, it was like, it won't sell more couches. I need to figure out how it sells more couches. But it's
so there are lots of studies, and I think it's finding the data, finding the people that are writing the books that are doing this every day across America, and they're all over. And so
If you buy a new
they haven't got
couch,
that message to Alaska yet.
if you buy a new couch and you put it in the back of your pickup to take home and it falls down by accident, goes into the big puddle in the parking lot, they'll never come back. There you go. Solved it.
sold.
Yeah.
I like that.
But yeah, it's getting people who aren't normally at the same table, and it was having those folks say, okay, we started out the group literally putting brochures in the greenhouses to say, here's what you need to do for having green infrastructure.
Yeah. So I've been in 2 meetings so far today, and I want to figure out, where's the money for that going to come from?
And then, okay, so aside from my small grant program, the DEC has a bigger loan program that municipalities usually apply for, our Municipal Grants and Loans Program. That's an avenue that they've always had some green infrastructure component, and they're revisiting how that looks. As I said, Fish and Wildlife, particularly as we relate what's flowing into our creeks here, has a reasonable amount of money. There are another folks. So yeah, we can chat.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cindy?
I have a question. Does this become part of the Cushman project, or is it an agreement between the property owner and the contractor after the project's underway, or how does that work?
There's separate agreement, like we've had funding going to Tanana Valley Watershed Association. Fish and Wildlife has had funding with the private owners. So it's been, and Tanana Valley has really done a good job sort of managing, keeping it as a full big project. So it's been little agreements between various partners. So it didn't actually, but it's
So that whoever put the Cushman Street project together didn't have to specify all this
right.
extra work here.
Right, but the city, who's been running the large part of the Cushman project, has been an integral part of, making sure all the pieces line up at the same time. There has been a true cost to project planning. You've got a meeting every other month to talk about this going on. You've got A needing to know what B is doing, needing to know what C is doing, and keep everybody else informed. That's a true cost. My office hasn't gotten another person to do that, but we've managed that in our workload. We said if we want to make this happen. And then we've handed out, I want to say, $50,000 over a couple of years to Tanana Valley to do some of the knocking on the doors to help with some of it. There's been in-kind donations. A lot of the AE firms have done it on in-kind donations.
Thank you very much. Sean, are you going to be doing the presentation too?
Yeah.
Okay. So next before us is the Robert Peak Road presentation, and I know that Jennifer had something to say before the presentation.
Can you get your name for the?
Lou Bassler.
Yeah,
They'll be specific.
after the last work session we had, there's a few of us talking about Rapid Creek Road. And the challenges that we have on funding any kind of improvements to Rapid Creek Road, given that the pavement is pretty old and in poor condition. And those of you who are not aware, Rapid Creek Road is owned, operated, and maintained by the state. It's outside of the road service area, and it is it has actually there's 2 projects that are underway that are currently in the TIP, either directly or indirectly. One of them is under the pavement replacement program, which is at this point has 0 funding in 16, and we're showing some illustrative funding in 16 and 17. But it's not showing any substantial funding until 2018. And in the meantime, we have started on a number of pavement replacement projects that would be funded under there. The other one that is showing up in the TIP is it's actually number 8. It's the Rapid Creek reconstruction, the recommendation from the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is the longer term improvements to add a center turn lane and a separated pathway. That one has a design hit in 2018. So in terms of Rapid Creek Road, the question is, does it make sense to even start on the reconstruction if we can get a lot, 10 to 15 years of service life with a maintenance project? And if we're going to do a maintenance project, should we be breaking it out separately in the TIP as its own line item given its cost? And so actually Sean Baskey is the project manager from DOT. He's going to give an overview of all of the needs and challenges on Rapid Creek Road. And I think that it'll get us enough for the TAC to start talking about it, maybe send it back to staff to look at some recommendations on how to move forward with the funding. So with that, Sean.
Thank you, Jim. Obviously, you guys caught me on a spectacular week for my voice, but I will plow through. So Sean Baskey, I'm a project manager with the Department of Transportation here in the Central Region. The Rapid Creek Road Pavement Preservation Project is mine. A couple other people from our project team are here. Lou Basler, who you just heard from. He's the project manager on the design consultant side, as well as Ken Chapman, who works for the Department of Transportation, is the project engineer on the project. So why are we here? Jennifer Ms. Witt, kind of shared the reason. Why are you guys hearing about a pavement preservation project at the 10? Obviously, it's an AMATS project, so it's somewhat of interest, but we are severely underfunded in the pavement replacement funding pot in the AMATS TIP. So I'm just going to go over a quick overview of the projects and share some other options on Rapid Creek. So just make sure we're all aware of where we're at and the scope of general things. So we're looking at Rapid Creek Road, looking from Old Seward Highway all the way up the road to DeArmond Hillside Drive intersection. We just did a pavement preservation project that extended the pavement preservation all the way down Old Seward Highway. So that one is done. This one picks up where that one stopped. So Rapid Creek Road is a 12-foot lane, 6-foot shoulder, and the bicycle and pedestrian accommodations are on the shoulders. As far as functional classification of the roadway, you'll see that we are a minor arterial for the western half or below Golden View. And then we move into a major collector east of that. As far as ADTs go, we're looking at the higher ADTs on the lower half of the hillside. And then as soon as you hit Golden View, there's the huge break down to lower ADTs. As far as significant facilities up there, we've got Station 10, we've got Bear Valley Elementary School, and we've got Golden View Middle School down Golden View Drive. As far as what's going on the roadway, we see severe deterioration of the pavement. We've got horrible rutting, and we've got significant cracking. So Department of Transportation has a database of some of the rutting, and so you'll see here at the bottom kind of a legend. So in the red areas
were over 3/4 of an inch in 2013 for ruts. So you'll note that there's two significant hills on Rabbit Creek Road, one right here, and then another one just after Golden View, and that's where you got your most severe rutting. The Department of Transportation, in this severely fiscally constrained times for the state, opted to go in and put in a skim coat of pavement on Rabbit Creek Road last year due to the severe rutting on the lower portion of it. That'll buy us a couple years. That skim coat is not expected to, significantly preserve the pavement over the next couple years. It's just a Band-Aid. We've also got drainage issues. So culverts are receiving water and freezing up. We have glaciation in the ditches where water is coming down the hillside and then freezing in the ditch, and then more water comes in and then freezes up and then freezes up. And eventually, sometimes it's coming over top of the road and then entering into the travel lanes and all the way across the roadway where the road is sloped to one side. All this water is also causing frost heaves and deteriorating the road even more. So we've got a couple specific spots that are experiencing some drainage issues. As far as crashes go, we heard a number of concerns from the public on the project about crashes. So here are the numbers. If you look at, we broke it into 3 different segments. So we've got the Old Seward Highway to Elmore, that's a significant piece, Elmore Road to Golden View Drive, and then Golden View Drive up all the way up to the top to Hillslade Drive. So there's your break in your ADTs right across Golden View. So looking at statewide averages, our crash rate is slightly above the statewide average in the lower portion between Old Seward Highway and Elmore, and then below the statewide average from Elmore to Golden View. These are segment crash rates, right? And then once you get above Golden View, then you move to a different functional classification, and so the statewide average is a different average, but it goes above the statewide average for that portion of it. So, but these are where the numbers pencil out for the 2008 to 2012 study period that we just looked at quickly. There were 48 total crashes in that segment, and then 17 minor injuries, and you can look at the other crashes there. So, we don't have any major injuries and we don't have any fatalities during that study period, but every accident is has a story associated with it. I like to share my story quickly whenever I talk about my projects. My wife got into a minor injury accident, or what we would classify as a minor injury accident, 5 years ago. At that time, she hurt her back, but we had a 1-year-old child, and she couldn't carry or hold my 1-year-old child for a couple months. And so that severely affected our family. You put in the stories of all those other people that have major injury accidents and fatalities. Every accident or every crash has a story with it. So we have to pay attention to it, right? We can see here that, although not severely above the statewide average, there is something worth noting there. The entire segment has not reached onto our HSIP list of top 100 segments. So that's also worth noting. As far as the 3 projects that we've got going on that the Department of Transportation has looked at, you guys have seen the Golden View Drive intersection study. So that was the hillside intersection study that was presented to you a number of years ago. That was done in 2014. As of right now, there is no project in the TIP for funding a design or construction project for that. Second project is adding a 2-way left turn lane from the bottom of the hill, Old Seward Highway, up to Golden View Drive. And that is in the MTP, as Ms. Witt shared. And then finally, my project, which is in the TIP under the pavement preservation pod. And that'd be the Rabbit Creek Road Pavement Preservation Project. So let's go over the Golden View, or just remind everybody about the Golden View Drive intersection project. So as far as crashes go, there were 33 crashes in that segment or at that intersection from 2000 to 2010. There's a crash rate at the intersection of 1.38 or 1.4 crashes per million injuring vehicles. The statewide average is 0.672, so we're significantly above it. As far as traffic volumes go, at that point on Rabbit Creek Road, we're sitting at 5,400 vehicles per day on Rabbit Creek. And then Golden View has 1,350. East of there, you'll remember that the ADTs dropped off significantly on Rabbit Creek Road east of there. Golden View Drive is expected to be one of the primary legs and will surpass Rabbit Creek Road as the primary route in the future. That's the expectation because Golden View Drive is experiencing a significant amount of development. There's also a concern about congestion in the mornings when we've got school traffic conflicts with commuter traffic and people trying to get out during that school opening. So here's the intersection, just to remind us all of the intersection. So we've got a stop-controlled intersection. The Department of Transportation had an HSIP project that installed a beacon at this intersection in 2014. So a minor improvement to better the intersection. It ranked up well to bring us to take away some of those angle crashes, and then the intersection was also being missed by people, and so it brings an attention and awareness to the intersection. Those numbers or the crash reductions aren't reflected in the intersection study that I previously showed. So that project looked at a number of alternatives. Extensive amount of alternatives at all of the intersections. So not that you're supposed to know exactly what each one of these intersections are, but we've got a number of alternatives, right? The preferred alternative was a realigned roundabout intersection. So we've got high grades coming down the hill, lengthening it over here and realigning the intersection to a different spot helped with that. So the estimated construction cost of that project was $12.4 million. As I mentioned, it's currently unfunded, but the Department of Transportation does plan on submitting an HSIP project nomination this year, although it hasn't been done yet, and we don't know whether or not it's been accepted. Second project, which is in the MTP, is the adding of the two-way left turn lane from the bottom of the hill at Old Seward Highway up to Golden View Drive. So left turn lanes are used when you've got intersection problems, right? So we've got a lot of people coming to try to get on and off the roadway at their either public approaches or to their driveways, which are going directly onto Rabbit Creek Road. So people that are sitting and waiting for a gap sit in that lane right now, and there's potential that they're making dangerous maneuvers in order to get around the people that are sitting in the lane, or they're all just getting stacked up behind them and potentially rear-ending them. So that is an issue going up and down the hill. And then, of course, we've got the highest number of accidents at the major intersections, which is something that you would expect. We took a quick look at the crash reductions. Obviously, with adding a two-way left turn lane, you get crash reductions. It's not a significant crash reduction because we don't have, as we pointed out earlier, a significant problem. So, you get some improvement, but not a significant improvement. So the project scope would be to widen the two-way left turn lane, add a separated pedestrian pathway, and then there's a breakout of the costs at $28 million roughly, with some other costs for $3 million for right-of-way and then $2.4 million for utility relocations. Project number 3 is my project, the pavement preservation project, which is in the tip. So obviously, we talked previously about the rutting and the drainage issues. So this project is slated to fix the rutting and the pavement issues by doing a full-length mill and overlay of the project. We are also going to be doing dig-outs where the road subgrade has deteriorated significantly to where we need to go in and replace the underlying materials. We're also going to be doing some selective, very selective drainage upgrades where we've got those glaciation issues where the water is just pooling up in those ditches and then coming across the roadway. So we've got 2 select locations that we were planning on going in and doing some ditch work and some other work. We've got to replace the guardrail throughout the segment, and then we've also are going to replace a couple signs. So there is the project scope, and at a total cost of about $7.8 million. There's a rehash of all the 3 projects, and that's basically it. The proposal is basically, or the stated concern is that we've got $7.8 million associated with the pavement preservation project, which is right now shown out in 2018 and beyond due to the very limited funding opportunities out of the pavement restoration pot, with other significant concerns in the area that can't be accomplished through means of AMATS in the near future. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Baskey?
One question.
Yes, sir.
Hal Hart. Sean, tell me about the first project, and the first project kicks in when you get a threshold of development at some point in the future. Is that when that really kicks in, or is that now? I mean, can they justify any sort of, how justified is it now with the numbers that?
Sure.
With that? Yeah.
So I would say that with the installation of the beacon at that intersection, right, that the game has changed. We've installed a minor improvement, so it's hard to tell what the crashes are in the future. I mean, we could make a crack at it, right? But most of those decisions on, looking back at historical crash rates, you look back a significant period of time. Not enough time has passed. But, we've got improvements going on to Golden View, right? The city has got an upgrade on Golden View. We will continue to have development down Golden View, and the problem will continue to get worse. The question is, obviously, when's the threshold, right? And that's a hard question to answer. In the near term.
It's a projection, right?
Yeah.
If I may. So we're looking to use potentially highway safety improvement program funds. And as with all different pots of money, these are limited in their depth. So we use a competitive process to try to allocate those funds where they would have the greatest return in terms of safety. It's completely a competitive process. So once a year or twice a year, we submit a number of project nominations for consideration statewide. And there they compete with the nominations from the other regions. And we try to look for, several years ahead, because a project like this would take at least 3 years to deliver, just with the right-of-way acquisition. There's a whole bunch of factors, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that go into the analysis.
Any other questions?
Wait, Sean, with the pavement preservation project, which is, kind of relates to the question of, whether and when to start the larger project, is it intended that it would extend the payment life by, when was the last time we paved in 1998?
Yeah, about there.
So it is quite old, so actually, so no, it's just some.
Right, you buy a lot of years with a project like we've got proposed, although, a $7.8 million price tag isn't a significant price tag, but you buy a lot of years on a lower use road like we see here.
And the pavement preservation is for the whole length from the highway all the way
Correct.
up.
Old Seward Highway all the way up.
Okay. And the reconstruction project, is that only from the highway to Golden View?
Correct, that was
Only.
the scope of that project,
Yeah.
as shown in the NT.
Yeah, it's from-
The cost estimated tip for the bigger reconstruction project. I want to say it's $13.7 million. We took a look at it maybe a year ago, the cost estimate, using overhead DOT, and that was the larger numbers that Sean was reflecting earlier. It's closer to 30. And it's a continuous strip of right away from DOT to DOT.
Yep. So, do you guys ever, this is kind of off the wall question, but so once you make the pavement all nice and pretty, do you see an increase in crashes because it's so nice and pretty and I'm gonna try out my new Charger on it? No?
Yeah, sometimes it's a traffic calming. It's bad.
Right?
Yeah, on neighborhood roads, sometimes, yes, we've seen an increase in speed when something is brand new because of the nice pavement. On a lot of these higher capacity roads, I mean, really, if people are traveling that speed irregardless, unless there's something really major.
Yeah, losing a mill in the pothole is more of a risk than speed.
Yeah.
Just, you mentioned Golden View Drive, just want to let everybody know, we put Golden View Drive design on hold. It's so woefully underfunded, we could continue to design it, not get any money for 10 years, and then we've got to go back and revisit it, so it's, nothing's occurring on it, except potentially further up a Bluebell intersection there. We can do something there.
Could the project potentially contribute towards a roundabout construction? That would help our benefit-cost ratio and make it more competitive.
There wouldn't be any money right now.
All right.
And
Oh,
I
Ms.
have one
White?
more question. In the analysis, were there any environmental issues in that neighborhood that this is going to solve besides the glaciation and are there any other issues that were identified that one of the projects might solve?
Sure. Excellent question. There was a very limited look last year by the Department of Transportation on overhead to look at it. We didn't identify any significant environmental concerns regarding, the general environment. Certainly there's, the neighborhood environment. And the public involvement side, that would bring about a whole new slew of challenges, right? That you'd have to go out there and really put boots on the ground and find out.
Ms. White, did you have anything else?
Yeah, a question maybe of Craig. We've talked off and on casually about adding another year to the tip, which is something we need to do sooner than later, because if we're going to get anything substantively of any size in 2019, we need to get starting on it now. And so that is one possibility to be looking at with a major tip amendment to add another year. I mean, but I think the Rabbit Creek Road issue at its current cost needs to be looked at in light of everything else that is, but would it take to fund it out of the tip? What else would be perhaps pushed out? But it is, if that pavement is 17 years old, the skim patch, we've got a couple more years, so we're gonna have to do something to it.
And I would say that skim patch is only in the uphill direction for the most severely rutted of the whole roadway. And when you have rutting, it gets exponentially worse over time because more and more people are forced to drive in those rutting lanes. So what we see now in 2013 for that other data, will get absolutely worse in the near future. The question is how bad, how quick.
So another question that Stephanie had asked before is, what would be, if you were to address the worst rutted sections only from Golden View down to the old Seward Highway, what would that cost? And if you do that, independent of fixing the drainage farther up the hill, are you putting that new improvement at risk, perhaps? If you were only to do the bottom half.
There's two drainage improvements, one at the extreme end of the project and then another one down towards the bottom. If we were to repave only a portion of the project, then, obviously with the lower ADTs further up the hill, you would see a slightly reduced deterioration over time, right? I mean, there's less vehicles on the road to deteriorate it. But yeah, I mean, of the two, this would be the higher priority. And it still comes at a significant cost though.
Because the dig outs and the rutting and.
Yeah. It needs the most work.
Yeah. But it also has the higher volume, so.
Right.
And the higher crash rate.
Indeed.
So road improvements are kind of like home improvements. The most expensive words are, well, you're at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Baskey? Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. That was a good overview of all the issues and.
So are there any other committee comments for the good of the order? Mr. Renzo?
First of all, I want to thank the DOT for the sponsoring transportation fair. I think that went off real well. I heard that there was, again, nearly 400 people come in. Thank you. The other thing is, tonight, starting at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, is the open house on Spenard Road from section from Hillcrest to Benson. So if you feel like attending and input. I think I went to that meeting in 2010.
Where is it?
That was an old project then.
Where is it?
I'm sorry, it's at the cafeteria at West High. So please, if you have any interest in it, attend it. If you're in favor of the project, attend it. If you're not, attend it.
Any other committee comments?
When do we have this public comment?
Just a reminder. Are you out of it? Okay. Oh, no, that was a result of the policy committee. Sorry.
At the policy committee, we were asked, I had a member of the public come up to me after the meeting and ask why he didn't get a chance to comment. It seemed like he normally did in the past. I thought, maybe we should add a specific line. I think Mr. Campbell just did it out of habit, but we're not always remembering to do that.
Oh, about public
So-
comment?
Okay.
Yeah, public comment.
They do that at the end of the assembly meetings. Right?
Yeah, public participation time.
Exactly.
So-
Okay. Well, now's your opportunity.
Limited to 2 minutes per person.
That's true.
I was like, we can talk about the weather or something like that.
I know.
That's
There was some really interesting legislation passed on Tuesday. I guess there's no other committee comments, and this is opportunity for any public comments. If there's any.
I just as a follow-up to Sean's presentation here, if it's okay with the committee to maybe ask staff to take a look at the cost and what are some of the options for moving it forward? Would that be okay? Sure.
Seems like this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming it's the highest, one of the higher priorities considering it's in the TIP and then in the MTP wherever it's ranked.
Right, and to take a look at if we replace the bigger project with the short-term project and push the other one out. I mean, just to look at a little bit more comprehensively. Is that okay?
Yes.
Anybody disagree?
Do we have to make a motion on that? No. Yeah, it's informational. It's kind of it's an evaluation.
I think I'm thinking fine anyway.
Okay.
While you're at it.
Exactly.
What else I get going?
Okay. Any other committee comments?
Just,
Yeah. Ms. Walsh?
I was just gonna say I haven't caught it for sure, but there's a Chelsea's doing a supply chain study. I'm not sure. Right now, I think they're doing the resilience segment. But there's, I believe it's next week. I'm sorry, I don't have the dates on hand, but it's a supply chain. They're following, like, I don't know if it's a jug of milk or a container or something. They're following something from Tacoma to its final destination within the state and how it gets from here to there. So it's kind of interesting. So you might check Channel 2's website. I think it has something about it on. So, and we all learned when Tote's ship went out of commission, how quickly the shelves can empty. That's not just here, that's further up the road system and everywhere else.
Yeah.
That's my pitch for the port.
All right. Any public comments? Are you sure that you want to talk about?
Sorry to throw you a curveball there.
Then we will adjourn this meeting. It is 3:54 p.m.